Good Erev Shabbos Parshas Shelach. In this Sedra, we have the well-known mitzvah of Challah. Challah is when we knead a dough, we take a portion of the dough and give it as a gift to the Kohen. What we eat on Shabbos is called Challah, not because we give our bread to a Kohen, but because we ensure that the dough which we use to make the bread for Shabbos is dough which was sufficient to demand the mitzvah of giving challah to the Kohen. Therefore, we ensure that the bread that we're eating on Shabbos is mitzvah bread. It is bread through which a mitzvah has occurred. Now, the question is, why is it such a big deal that we have challah on Shabbos? Why should we make sure that our dough, that our bread on Shabbos is bread that has been tithed with challah? After all, if we want to have mitzvah bread, we are having mitzvah bread. By having the bread at the Seudah, having it as part of our mitzvah meal on Shabbos, Friday night, and part of our mitzvah meal on Shabbos day, it is mitzvah bread already. So what is the notion here that we have this custom of ensuring that our bread on Shabbos is mitzvah bread, is bread through which challah has been tithed? There's no prohibition of eating bread which is beneath the threshold that requires challah. If it doesn't require challah, I'm doing nothing wrong. So why, the question therefore is, why do we make sure, do we have a custom to ensure that the bread that we eat on Shabbos is bread that has been tithed with challah, i.e., and that is why we call our bread challah. And I think to understand this minhag, we need to understand what the significance of challah actually is. In this week's Sedra, the Torah tells us, gives us a little bit of a hint. It says, when you give challah, reishis harisosechem, when you give the challah, kitrumas dagan, give it, it is like the truma. So the Torah is creating an analogy here between one of our tithes, challah, the dough we give to the Kohen, and truma, the gift of the crops of the grain which we give to the Kohen. And in this analogy lies the Rishonim and the Mefarshim wonder, why is the Torah creating this analogy? Give the challah like you give the truma. So on one level, Rashi says a very technical answer. We know that truma has no minimum shear, has no minimum amount. You give one grain of wheat and you have fulfilled your truma obligation. Similarly, says Rashi, when one gives challah, there is also no minimum amount. You give the tiniest amount of dough, you fulfilled your obligation. And so this seems to be a very technical answer. But on a deeper level, I believe what the Torah is telling us here is that when it comes to giving, when it comes to chesed, when it comes to doing for others, there is no minimum amount which is insignificant. There's no too little when it comes to giving. And so, on Shabbos, when we have prepared a beautiful meal, and we are sitting here hopefully satiated, and we are enjoying time together as families, individuals, not having to go to work, and we are sitting pretty, as it were, we are reminding ourselves about the importance of giving, and we reflect back on our week. Did I give this week? There is no amount of giving that is too little. How much of my time this past week did I dedicate to the klal, to others, to chesed, to bikur cholam, to whatever it is? And this is why we have the custom of having challah bread. So we're always walking around the Erev Shabbos and on Shabbos saying, did you buy the challah? Did you get the challah? This is delicious challah. Let's have challah. Challah should be on our minds, should be on our brains. The notion of giving, even when we are hopefully and with gratitude sitting with great plenty on this day. There's another way of looking at it, or another level to this, and that is that challah and truma are connected. In just as truma is the first of the process. We cut the grain, and it is the first of the tithes that we give. First truma, then meiser, etc., and then. Nevertheless, similarly, when it comes to challah, it is also the beginning of the process. We don't give challah all the way at the end. We designate and are mafresh the challah. We designate and separate the challah at the beginning of the kneading process, not at the end when it has already been baked into a bread. So truma is at the beginning of the process, and challah is at the beginning of the process. And here again, I think that there is a powerful idea, and that is the priority, the centrality of giving. This is first. It's not an afterthought. Chesed is a first. It's not an afterthought. Bikur cholim nichum avelim. It is a first. It is not. It should not be an afterthought. So again, on this day of Shabbos, when we are when we are in a receiving mode, sitting on a day of plenty and goodness and relaxation and peace, we reflect upon the centrality of giving. How central was Chesed in my past week? How central is it in my life? And therefore, Truma is at the beginning. Truma is a priority. Truma is central. Challah is at the beginning. Challah is priority. Challah is central. Must be central as well in our lives. Thirdly, the Torah tells us that Challah and Truma are compared not because of the fact that they are both at the beginning of the process, but in fact, if you look at it, they are actually at opposite ends of the process. Because if you take them together, because truma is when we cut the grain and we give a stalk of wheat or a grain of wheat, whatever it is, and challah is at the end of the process. We're now taking the wheat and making it into bread. That is to say that when the notion of giving, the notion of chesed, should be at the beginning and at the end. Why are we emphasizing this point? There is a fascinating experience of the human condition. Sometimes when a person is at the beginning of their career, they're humble and they're looking for help and they're looking for assistance and they're willing to give help and give assistance because they know that they're vulnerable and they know that they need, and they have a consciousness and an awareness of their precarious situation. And so a person at the beginning of their career, at the beginning of their education, at their beginning of a project, at the beginning of an initiative, at the beginning of a marriage, at the beginning of a life's work. And when a person is at the beginning, they often feel a sense of humility because they know that they're vulnerable, they haven't accomplished and achieved yet, and they need help. But at the end of the process, after I've made my money, after I've achieved goals, and I have I have achievements and accolades to be proud of, then sometimes it is part of the human condition. We are less giving and we are less kind because we have a sense of entitlement and we have a sense of pride. We have a sense of pride and we have a sense of entitlement because of the pride of our achievements. Be those achievements intellectual achievements, academic achievements, financial achievements, life achievements, whatever they are, good, bad, or a mundane, holy or otherwise, a person can be lulled into a sense of pride. And when a person feels pride and entitled, they're less likely to be kind giving. I no longer feel so vulnerable. I'm a PhD and I have 40 years of experience behind me. I'm respected by all of my colleagues. I've made millions of dollars. At that point, it's harder sometimes to be kind and generous. And therefore, on this day of Shabbos, when we are in this, again, receiving mode, when everything is hopefully peaceful and we are feeling plenty, we are reminded of Challah. That it's not giving and kindness and generosity, not just by Truma, but also at the Challah stage of our life. Not just when we feel vulnerable because we're at the beginning and we know we're in a precarious situation, but even when we have achieved and we already feel that we are sitting pretty. Even then, and even more so then, we have to remind ourselves when we are in a Challah state, also to give. At the end of the process, also to be kind and generous to others. And so therefore, Challah, the fact that we give Challah, that we eat Challah on Shabbos is not just about making sure that we're having mitzvah bread, but it's making sure that we have a cognizance and a consciousness of Challah in our lives. of giving, of prioritization of giving, the centrality of giving. There's no giving which is too little. And even after we have achieved greatness in our lives, and even after we are no longer precarious and vulnerable in our lives, specifically then to ensure that we're kind, generous, and giving as well. A good Shabbos to all, and I wish us all to enjoy our Challah. Good Shabbos.